coming tonight. A super quick announcement. So I usually do a couple industry announcements to kick us off. First, super big thank you to Bitheads for letting us use their venue. We're happy to be back. They have charity jars out in the lobby, so as a thank you, definitely take your change and toss them into the charity jars. Scott, do you know the charity this month? It's a very good charity.
I would know. Yeah, it's for animals or kids or something. Just one of the two.
I'll verify and do a shout out.
Yeah. Art Association.
Art Association.
Art.
Oh, support artists.
Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Heart
Association. So yeah, so drop your change in there. That would be super appreciated. A couple quick things. So Capital Game Expo is this weekend. So I know a lot of you are coming, some of you are speaking, so very excited about that. If you haven't got your tickets, the conference, we actually sold out of conference tickets today. We've actually increased the ticket amounts by 50 tickets. So if you're kind of waiting on getting your ticket, do that. We have a bunch of industry leaders coming in, sharing everything from starting a studio, marketing, PR, tools, art, everything. So definitely check it out. On the expo side, we have close to 100 exhibitors in games, art, tech, showcasing their games, some that haven't been released in the market yet, so it's definitely a good way to see what Canada is producing in terms of game and tech and see some games that haven't come out yet. A couple other quick things. Ottawa OJam, Ottawa's Game Jam, is going to be happening again for its 3rd year, and that's always the weekend before Canada Day. It's a great game jam, so definitely watch for updates and get a team ready, start thinking about that. We're definitely going to be having some mentors come in. We're going to have Pens and Pixels artists in to help the developers, so it's going to be a really fun weekend, so keep that in mind. Girl Force, so a group of industry leaders here in Ottawa are teaching girls with no technical experience to make video games from scratch, and so that's entering into its 3rd class. Applications are still open, Sherry, correct?
Yeah, for another week.
Another week,
yeah.
So if you know of anyone who might be interested, share that around. And I think that's it.
Yeah, there's a couple more points
Yeah, okay.
I'll fill in. Thanks, Julian.
Yeah.
A couple more points. Number one, clarity on what the charity is this month.
Yep.
So they have monthly charity this month. It's for an association called the Learning Disabilities Association.
That's what I meant when I said.
Very related to heart problems, so it was close. Also, I want to thank our second sponsor for this month. It's Snorted Studios. Thanks a lot. Good beer and snacks. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. And finally, we really want to thank our panelists today a lot for their time and the experience they're going to share with us today. I shouldn't have said finally. I have two more groups to thank. The second group, or the second last group, is our team at IGDA Ottawa. Will help us put these events together. Thanks a lot. We know who you are. Some of us are here today, some of us not, but thank you. Lastly, thanks to you for attending. It's great. Lots of new faces today. I'm hoping to get to know all of you. Hope you continue to come join us every month. Anyways, moving on. We'll begin our panel now in a second. You guys good? All right, cool.
Just FYI, if everybody can hear us at the back, that's great, but if not, there's lots of seats at the front. There is no projection system going on, and we're all going to end up talking a lot.
There's no splatters on either.
Just saying.
So,
Buy you some time, man.
that's good. Thank you, Scott. Anybody wants to move front, or you guys good? Can you guys hear us okay in the back?
Great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. So as you all know, today our panel is focused on government funds for game development companies in the Ontario and Quebec regions. We have a mix of experts in that domain, specifically around companies that have raised funds successfully or unsuccessfully over the last 20 or less years. We also have representation from Algonquin College's Applied Research Institute. Is that what it's called? Office. So diverse mix of opinions coming together. So I'll stop talking for the next couple of minutes and let the panelists introduce themselves, starting from Scott.
I'm Scott, here at Bitheads. We also have a game studio called PlayBrains, but right now we're mostly doing back-end tech stuff through our Brain Cloud back into the box. All the using for your games, you're worried about doing anything with connected gaming, talk to me later and I'll hook you. That's my plug.
I'm Jean-Sylvan, Sormany. I have gaming studios in Ottawa called Snowden Studios. We just celebrated our 7th anniversary, and so going into our 8th year. The studio has grown from an original team of 5 co-founders. Now we're 20 employees and growing again this month, and with always more and more projects. I'm here also to talk about how government grants have been helpful for us.
I'm Riccardo, and from Algonquin College Applied Research Office. I was directly or indirectly responsible for raising over $9 million over there, which makes me sound like a genius, but actually it was a nice program from NSERC, I'll describe them more later. So it made it kind of easy, and also having a college name. But I'm looking forward to tell you a little bit of what I learned and possible opportunity for you as well.
And I'm Rob Stamper. I have a company called Diametric Games. It's a little different than a brick and mortar. We've got a virtual office with some people, small team indie game company that we're across 4 different countries. And I'm going to sort of share the flip side of being all the successfuls with some of the unsuccessfuls and what you really might get on the other side of some of your applications.
Great. So my name is Matt. Some of you may know me, most of you may not. I'm the co-chair at IGDA Ottawa. For my day job, I'm a product manager in a software development company. I worked in the video game industry for close to 10 years. I've been part of companies that have raised funds for a couple of years. I've seen the fight firsthand. I'm going to be moderating the panel today. Okay, so let's go into our first topic, which is going to be general information on various funds available in the Ontario and Quebec regions that game development companies and startups get.
Should I start here?
Okay,
I did prepare something. So
great
let me
teaser video.
It's not a teaser video, it's a presentation. So I just thought it was a good way to introduce things. So let's say you want to start your studio, you want to fund your first $1 million game, you have a great idea, you said I need $1 million to do that idea. How do you do it with our current funds, and how much it will cost to fund your $1 million idea? So first, you need your launch base, and I would tell you that in Ontario, we're lucky. We have the OMDC that has a fund called the Interactive Digital Media Fund. It can fund up to an idea that's going to go up to $250K. So let's say your idea is great, it's a genius idea, so you're asking them for your first $250,000. The good news about this fund is that you don't have to reimburse them. It's a grant. This money is yours. But it's a competitive process, so your idea needs to be good. But you have your first $250K, that's great. The IDMF requires you to at least invest the same amount on the other side. So if you get the $250K, you at least need to also have $250K to go with it. The good news is that the Canadian Media Fund has the experimental stream that will fund up to $500K for your project. But for example, we'll stick to $250K. So you get the other $250K out of the Canadian Media Fund experimental stream. This is a competitive process, so your idea again needs to be good. And be careful, we'll discuss about it, but good for IDMF doesn't mean good for CMF and vice versa. The other flip side is that with CMF there's royalties, so whenever your game is finished, you have to reimburse the money you've been gathering. But you don't care because you're going to be rich because of your idea, and giving a share to CMF won't be a problem. Now, how do you can compete? You can have more money. So let's move into space exploration. Oh, you have the title or black, right? The HIRAP. So the NRC, so the National Council of Research, have a program called HIRAP, and they have a program within HIRAP that is called Accelerated Review Process. It's basically a very simple, a relatively simple process where they can give you up to 80% of your development costs. So for example, if you invest 50% in developing some sort of technology that is going to help you in the future, building more games, extraordinary games, you can get back 40K. I've kept in this sample the 50K. They can go much higher than 50K, but under 50K, it's a very streamlined process. You just have to have the approval of one person, and you can get this money in a relatively simple way. There's a review process, so your idea needs to be good. Now, second part of your space exploration, you can finance part of your developments through the SHRED, so the Scientific Research and Experimental Development Tax Incentive Program, combined with the Ontario Innovation Tax Credit. So this is after the fact money, so you'll have to borrow that money in some ways, but you will be able to get 45% back of your expense through of your R&D expense. So in our example, not everything will be able to be SHRED eligible, but let's say you're developing some part of text. In this example, I'm going to say you're going to invest $125K into tech development. You will get back 56.2 to 66K back. You need to prove that the project falls under research and development and innovation. Now, you want also to have help, and you can get help from new people fresh out of school. There's some people that are like stars. The math is relatively simple. You invest 20K, they will provide 20K. Well, actually, it's up to 30K. But who's paying like their new grads 60K? Not a lot of people. So let's say we're going to stick to 20K and 22K. Finally, you have the market access program because you want to also to show your games to the world. They will reimburse your up to 50K, 50% of your representation expense up to 12K. So it's a competitive process. Again, you need to have a good idea. And once you're done and everything and your game is done, the Ontario Digital Media Tax Credit will reimburse up to 40% of your eligible expense for developing a game. So in our example, the remaining to do the million, and I'll show you the math after, is 261K, and you will get back at the end 104K. The flip side is that it's 15 months after the end of your fiscal year following the end of your project. So if you're lucky enough to have finished your project on the first month of your fiscal year, it means that there could be a delay up to 27 months before you get that money. You also need to qualify, so you have to have the right type of expense, the right type of product. So there's a table that you can't read, so I'll read it for you. So, but basically, when you combine all of these, what I'm showing is that through the different funds, the actual amount of real money, of cash you will have to put on the table, not taking into consideration that you may have to finance some of those tax credits, is roughly $267K for funding a $1 million project. So roughly for $250,000, you can build a $1 million games, which is pretty amazing. And there's not a lot of place in the world where you can, with $250,000, fund a $1 million games. Now that's the beauty, the blue skies, everything. Now we'll discuss too about the flip side of this, but in principle, that's how you can do $1 million games here.
Great, thanks, Judge. I think we're done here.
You should applaud, because that's the last good news you're getting.
Your turn to go over for the rest of the night.
Yeah, exactly.
So, others in the panel, in your experience, what are the different funding options that you guys are aware of, and what are the, just outside the context of what your experience was with these funds? Can you guys describe what these funds are, eligibility criteria for these funds, pros and cons, what they cover, what they show?
Again, it is really a good, all those funds are real, and you really can have access to that money. It just, especially the other, even if you did get all of those, the timing is a big thing, because things like the IDM fund open up like twice a year, so you apply at certain times, or CMF opens up twice a year, so you apply at those different times. So it's not like when you're ready to present your project, you go apply for these things. Some of those things are sort of like that. But generally speaking, you sort of have to wait and find out. Then you might apply for IDM in May, but not find out until October if you've got it or not. But in the meantime, you're already applying for CMF and saying you have a conditional thing from IDM when you put your application in. So those things really need to get coordinated around. Some of those are upfront money, so they will pay you 60% or whatever upfront of your expense costs that you go through, and as you get milestones, they fill in some other pieces. Collecting the last part of either CMF or IDM is typically the time when it's fraught with delays, I would suggest, traditionally speaking. But they're still quite timely, and a lot of banks will let you borrow against those. Ottawa banks are incredibly reticent to loan you anything against digital media tax credits. because they, as Jay said, they're very long to get there. In reality, you can be waiting literally years to actually get attached. We are quite literally right now waiting on our 2013 tax credits to come in. It's now 2017. So a dollar I paid Sherry probably worked here back when she was one of the dollars I'm waiting for. So I got paid like 40 cents or. But that being said, it's 40 cents of the dollar I spent is waiting to come back. Like it's substantial when it gets here. It's just really a long time before it gets there. Now the good news is if you're a studio that stays in business for a few years, eventually they just all come along. Even though I'm waiting for 2013, at this time last year I was sort of waiting for 2012. So as long as you maintain the same flow, it's kind of like you get it every year. As long as you can wait the first few years to get data. But they also have made a lot of changes that are really quite significant for qualifying for OID-MTC. That one is, and we can get into more of the detail what that is. It makes it much more difficult for your projects to qualify at all. You can actually blow your project out of the water immediately just by doing some very innocent things by people you staff on a project. So those things are definitely to work out for. But sorry, again, way too negative. Remember, when I meant to open with this, the government doesn't owe you anything, right? So this isn't money you're owed. You have, if you go through the right hoops, if you pay attention, if you timesheet very well. We'll get into that later about how you keep records to make sure that you increase your chances of getting these things. Then the government will attempt to help you with money. And CMF isn't technically government, but close enough. Again, you're not owed anything, but if you follow the rules appropriately, you can unlock a very substantial amount of money as long as you can afford it, which is to wait long enough to actually get funds in any case that's out there. Anyway, I'm sounding way too negative. It's a very good program. All of them are good programs. Some of them just take longer than others.
I just wanted not to distract from a big thing, but there's an opposite end of the scale. The college, we have these, by the way, I am an artist. I'm an artist. My background's science, but I'm here because Jerry Paquette kicked my butt on a creative project, writing project. It's now going to the agent for publishers. Let's see what happens. But I did specialize on the science and engineering grants. But at the college, they're pretty wide open, and it's applied research. You know, it's not like university research. So they let us do anything that seems to have some technical risk, seems to have some adoption of new technology. It's already done. It's commercially sold, but if nobody's used it in, say, the country or even the city, then it's eligible for applied research. And there's small grants that are sweet, $25,000, quite smaller than what you guys are talking about. But the application process is pretty simple. The company should have 2 employees and 2 years of operation. So it's not just for the startups, which is where my heart is, because I did have a startup at one point. But it's $25,000, and it's enough for 2 students to work for summertime with a principal investigator, we call them, a professor who's supervising and also contributing as well. Typically, a prof would work 6 or 8 hours a week, and the students 32 hours a week for 12 weeks of the summertime. And that would be for prototyping or testing something, proof of concept kind of thing. That's one of the avenues. There are others, even smaller ones, but just wanted to point out there's.
Is that doing like interesting and new things with games, or it's not just generally making?
Yeah.
If I wanted to make a general everyday game, it's got to be cutting edge.
Something new about it. Yeah, it's not innovative, not production. But they love it that we're closer to commercialization than universities. And when I ask them, where should we position? As close as you can to commercialization. So it's pretty good.
Well, the CMF stream that Jean-Sylvan was talking about earlier when we're talking about the experimental stream, it's changed a little bit over the last few years, but it used to be a place where it had to be, you have to be doing something weird and wild and different and like augmented reality before it was real or whatever. But it has to be very commercial, and they're just completely opposite. Like, you couldn't create, well, I'm going to create a game that you just think about your moves and hopefully it gets it right. That's not a commercial product, but they only let you succeed if it has a good commercial potential. But it's got to be experimental at the same time, which kind of automatically means it's not. They've changed a lot of that now.
Actually, there's 2 streams now. There's the experimental stream and the game production. production stream, which is a little bit more geared toward commercial ready product.
Just to not be negative like Scott, I was, one of the things that you got to understand is that the government, like you said, they don't know you anything, and you're not looking for anything that they're supposed to give you. You're looking for you're going there asking for somebody to help you out. Now, in that mentality, you can walk in with the best, most grandiose concepts and everything, but they're also looking to mitigate their risk. They're looking to make sure that they're not going to throw money after falling. So what they're looking to do is they're looking to, with the IDMF fund, which is a non-reimbursable, they're looking to give you the money so that way that's going to best help an evolutionary direction for the business and the industry in Ontario. And with CMF, they're looking to, down the road, make a couple of bucks back if they can. So if you go in there and you're not hitting their pigeonholes like they want to see, you're already putting a bunch of strikes against you. So it's going to make your competition against all those other competitors, because you got to remember, like we all know, there's a lot of people applying for these things. It's not like you and 4 other guys, and that's it. Good luck. Or ladies. Girl force you. But realistically speaking, you got to be aware that what you're putting in there is going to be something that you're not just selling the game that you want to make. You're selling what you can bring to them as something that they're looking to get as well.
I'm going to add to this that there's a human aspect to some of those funding programs. So CMF and IDMF, if you have a good network and know the people at CMF and IDMF, it's sad, but it increases your chances. CMF, I was told before applying that I should meet with them. I should make sure that when they receive my application, they're expecting that application that they know. So even though they say that it's just like a purely independent jury, everyone will tell you that if you want to apply to those programs, you're better being connected in the industry. They are valuing companies that they already had success with. They are valuing, there's CMF, when you have the judging process, they judge, the first section is the team. And it's out of 25 points, they're giving points for your team. I was told, unless you already have a pre-established relationship with CMF, you will never score higher than 21 on the team side. So it's not completely unbiased. You need to have some sort of relationship with them. But the good news is once you already have applied successfully to CMF, it makes the following application a little bit easier. So there are a lot of companies that are continuously successful applicant to the CMF. The IDMF, we just won our 4th application to the IDMF. It's a process where once you know the people, they trust you, they know that you will not play with their money, you're going to follow their rules, they are more likely to support your project. Still, you need to pay attention to you and have a strong proposal. It doesn't mean that you can come with crap after, but it's a process where you need to have those connections, and this is something that as an indie studio we're not used to do, as going out there, meeting with people, shaking the right hands, being in place and where you need to be, and making sure you establish those connections with the industry.
Well, that's great. Thanks for the full disclosure. By the way, this is going to be on YouTube.
Just to further Jess's point, which is 100% right, coming from his position, being, you guys are in your 7th, 8th year now, right? 8th year, and you've been rolling for 20 years. We're only in year number 4, and the number of people that we know compared to you guys, the number of times you've shaken those hands, or had the beer, or had the conversation, passed the cards, we're way, way less than that. And so we actually I went down and had a meeting with CMF, and you can YouTube this, because this is just, I'm not telling anything that's not real, that I actually went down and represented the company to talk to CMF, and I was supposed to have gotten information back, a call back, and so I reached out to them. And on multiple occasions of calling out and calling CMF to talk to somebody, I got 0 response. And so when I went in, and Jess, you saved my ass at the end, on the CMF application. But at the same time, I could have had much more preparedness to it had I had better contact and interaction with you. And that's just touching to CMF, not mentioning anything on the IDMF fund. But it is really it is a people business as well. As much as it is tech, it is still a people business, and the more you know, the better you're going to be.
Any thoughts on that?
Just briefly, in my experience with our grant funders, it's great to talk to them. Not all of them want to hear from you, and they don't give you contact information. It's impossible to get through to some. But the ones that do say, contact us, contact them. Because you don't talk to the person who's going to adjudicate. It's quite an open conversation, I find. It's surprisingly open. So, yeah, talk.
Because remember, especially with things like the IDM, it's not OMBC deciding if you're, they assemble a jury every time they go out. So it's a very good point. Like there'll be 7 different people who will evaluate, 7 different industry people will look at different proposals and run, I don't know, number 7 or whatever it is. A number of people will look at it. So it's not like the bureaucracy is determining if it's a good game or not. They are game industry people trying to say, yeah, this makes sense, this is a good game, this is a unique take on something else. They are looking for that, and they are industry people.
There's a flip side of having like an independent jury every time, and I'm going to share that other experience. So we filed an assignment CMF application in a year ago, so in the April deadline. And basically, you're filing your application, filling out your application, and you receive feedback saying like, you're 4 points away from winning the application. Here's what was weak in your application, and then you get like your feedback. So you're working back on the drawing board because you say, I'm going to reapply, and they invite you. You can reapply. They said like, it's a fairly good proposal, so reapply, but fix those things. So you work really hard. But then it's a completely different jury that goes the second time, and the second time you do increase your score because you did work harder on that application, but the points that gets flagged as negative the second time are completely different than the points that were negative the first time. And basically, like I was telling you about that team, the first time I applied, I got 21 points on the team. The second time I applied, 17. Why did I lost 4 points for the exact same team, where basically I took the negative points and improved on them? It's become subjective to who's basically reading your application. So I think, like as a rule of thumb, if you are applying to CMF, go to multiple people that have applied successfully and ask them to review, and not just one person that has successfully, because maybe he's going to have a completely different mindset than other people. So go see 4 or 5 companies that have successfully. Ask each of those companies what they think about, what they would improve that, and try to make it like robust, solid for every different opinion.
So that's great advice. In your experience, how many people have you reached out to your application?
Not enough, because we didn't get the CMF funding. So
Actually, only 17 the second time.
No, but apparently, so actually we got like our first CMF application, we got it, and for some XYZ reason before the contracting, we blocked it. The second time, we went with a similar approach, and the second time, maybe more competitive. They also tell you that the process can become more competitive. You never know. Like, you could have applied on a time where there's only 300 companies applying, and the next time, there's 1,000 companies applying. So you don't know who's your competition. You don't know how you're going to score toward your competition. Usually, the scoring stays the same, but they can change the passing mark. So if there's more companies, the passing mark could be much higher. So it could be much harder to get it the second time. Or much easier. You don't know. You could go with the exact same application, and because there's less competition, you get approved. So so how many? We did show our presentation to 3 people, but last time it wasn't enough. So it depends.
So on the competition note, what are the thoughts of the others on the panel on the natural inclination for people to think, well, this is an application, I don't want to go and reveal this to my potential competitors. What do you guys think about that?
I think in a lot of cases, and it's business in general, game industry I think is a little more problematic than most. People need to get over themselves. You're not revealing state secrets. It's a game, guys. And yeah, you think you have a unique take on something, but I'll virtually guarantee it's been done before. It's just a matter of execution, and yet you might have an interesting twist on it, but nobody's out to steal your game. It's fine. Share along. And we were just talking about this before, about potential problems with Game Incubator. You know, how can you have a bunch of companies sitting together and you know, sharing ideas? No, that's my idea. No, that's mine. Got to get over it, guys. Just learning and learning what other people are doing is huge. That being said, showing somebody an application saying, can you help me figure this stuff out? you're actually going to know if that guy comes up with the same game that you did already. Then you know who to punch in the face. And it's also not going to happen because it's okay. People will be very generous with their time, and they really are there to help. By and large, in the game industry, especially in and around the folks that we know, people are just there to help, and they're not there to steal your Angry Birds, but the chickens.
One of the things that I've found is that there's, like, I can't say it enough that the community of the gaming industry is the bread and butter and the foundation and the backbone for success for one and for all. Without some of the conversations that I've had with these gentlemen, we just met tonight, so you see what it's all about. But with these two guys over here, like some of the conversations I've had with them over the past few years have helped me redirect and make sure that I'm headed in the right direction. Because we're a small company, we're just still starting off, and it takes time. But with the information and the guidance that you can get from your colleagues, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's on a higher level than you are in the industry. It could be somebody who's a colleague, somebody who has a different perspective, can see it, because more eyes to see it can help you out to get a different point of view. Because we all know that as soon as, like I got a 3-month-old girl, you know, she's the most beautiful girl on the planet. But I guarantee that anybody else that's a 3-month-old girl is going to think the exact same thing. And it's the different perspective that makes it unique. And that's why if you have an application, I may think it's the best thing, and I don't want to, you know, screw it up. But I go to Scotty, and Scotty's like, well, you know what, this part screwed up. Awesome, I never would have seen it in your point of view. Because each of us comes from a different background, different perspective. That perspective we have comes from our own experiences, failures, and successes. That's going to give us that opportunity to all grow as a community and individually as companies.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a different industry, but you guys said it perfectly. And the word collegial at college, like we work together as colleges, but in our office we get entrepreneurs coming in and they're very naive about their IP and secretive and whoa, and suddenly it's like, guy, you got to loosen up a bit, you know? Yeah, and it does help the industry. I mean, when the community is strong, everyone wins. You know, rising tide raises all ships. That thing is really true.
Let's dig a bit deeper into specifics on your experience with funds of your choice, right? So in the past, in your experience, what other different funds have you guys been successful in or not successful in? What type of games were they?
We can legitimately say, I think, that we've won and lost every program. Like we've put in applications that we've won, we've put in applications that we've lost, or we've put in things for non-competitive funds. So things like the IDM and CMF are competitive, you know, jury judged. There's only a limited pool of money to happen. Things like the OID-FTC tax credits are theoretically, anybody who follows these criteria will get this money for a qualifying game. And there's just a little bit of judgment on what constitutes a game versus an average game or something like that. But by and large, it's, if you follow these rules, you will get that money. But you can still trip yourself up, and we've just gone through the changes to the tax code, which were just made official a couple of weeks ago, a month ago maybe, but retroactive till whenever, that really can screw up a company. And we should talk about those. But by and large, it basically says, and has anybody here done any of these programs we're talking about? Or are these new for virtually everybody? Okay, for almost everybody, they're new. So has anybody even applied for the OID-MTC tax credits at all? Because you're all young people, so probably not. You will get to a place where it should be the lifeblood of Ontario's gaming studios, because it is a non-competitive, you can make the worst game possible. But as long as you make it and release it, and it's a game, you should actually get access to this money. But you can absolutely screw yourself up and screw up the whole process. And we have a unique way of screwing that up in Ottawa, and that's because we're a border town, which means there's a lot of people who live in Quebec that work in Ontario. It's an Ontario fund. Guess what? They want Ontario workers on it. And if you have, let's say, too many Quebec people working on your project, it used to be you would just exclude them from your Ontario calculation. Now, if you have too many on them, the whole project is forfeit.
It's not too many, it's just one.
It's just one is too many.
I'm gonna jump in and share my experience. I was telling
This
him,
is so depressing.
I was telling him, last year, so Snowden did add in salaries, so we did expend in salaries $1.2 million. So it's great, like a lot of money got put into salaries. So
To be fair, you only put up 320 grand. We saw your salary.
actually, we did put 1.2 million in salaries, and so this year I'm filing the OID MTC tax credit, and I'm starting looking at the project. First, they did a change in the project saying that if your
Actually,
game,
so you should, to be clear, if this was a year ago,
oh yeah,
so what would have happened if this was a year ago? What
let's
would
say
you-
2 years ago, before
Okay,
the
okay.
8825, I would have probably gained most of that. So let's say I would have had a pretty substantial claim of maybe 200K, let's say. This year my claim was $4,500 for the $1.2 million I did ask. And even like that, I'm not sure they will not exclude me for some real rules in 26
That's what you're
weeks.
applying for.
In
You don't know if you're
26
going to
months.
get that.
So I don't know if in 2 years I will know that they don't give it to me. They may change. They also change rules retroactively. So that's a start for you too. So
Yeah.
that we're against it. But for many reasons. First, they changed the rules lately to say that any games that doesn't have a revenue stream should not be considered as eligible. So basically, we're doing kids games where you don't want kids to spend money. We're doing kids game for the walk rats. Everyone knows the walk rats, this kids show, you will learn the animals, things. So we're developing kids games. But because we're not selling any product within those games, because we're not putting ads on top of children, because ads are evil, because we're not doing that kind of things, all these projects gets automatically excluded. The famous like 80-25 rules, they have rules that they says that 80% of the project needs to be eligible cost, and these the eligible cost is cost made in Ontario toward Ontario residents. So basically, and just take this project, you have 4 people on a project, there's one of your guys that works equally, one of your guys used to live in, or lives in Quebec, basically 25% of your product is considered non-eligible, basically your application is thrown to the garbage. This application doesn't work. So basically this 80-25 rules, and this year I was happy, had like 2 projects, and one of my, so I had this $5,000 project, and I had another project with 25K. And as I was like filling the paperwork, like it was respecting everything, like the Ontario people. And then I asked our employee to start filling like the sheet of their residency. And the sheet has you on the December 31st of the previous year. And there was a guy that wasn't working at us at that time. We hired him on January 23rd, and he was on January 23rd, but he had moved in Ontario in January 3rd. So he had spent 3 days outside of the province for the year, and he told me, "Oh no, I was living in Montreal at that point." I said, "Like, you're not serious?" He was like 30% of my expense on the project. I said, "Okay, I'm screwed," and basically that application went to the garbage can.
So he will not be able to claim that guy on OID MTCs until January 1st of next year. So for the whole rest of this year, anything that guy does is not eligible for tax credits, which is a very distressing, unfortunate thing. But that's been the case.
off right now?
Yeah.
So
Anybody's looking to hire anybody. I think there's a guy who's about to be really good.
So all into this to say that that these rules are complex. They are. I understand why they're made, but you have to check if you are relying, especially if you decide to start your studio. So first, to apply to the OID MTC, and that's my other advice. You need to be incorporated. You need to have payrolls. You need to have these setups. So maybe if you're planning to do a game in your garage and wait for the game to be released to start like sharing the revenue and not paying yourself, these programs are not for you. So you need to be incorporated. But that's something that is not a bad idea, because given the access to refund, it's something that is not that complex. Incorporating costs like $200, and you're set. And then, of course, you need to start doing accounting, but it looks more scary than it is. Like really, we went through the process. We had a friend that was doing bookkeeping. He was just doing the bookkeeping for us, and like things like started like doing a payroll may look expensive, but you can have like an accounting software that will do the payroll for you, and you just have like to speak to your bank for direct deposit, and then suddenly you unlock all those tax credits. So it's something that you should consider if you're doing a game. and then applying to those tax credits, just make sure you are doing the condition. It's sad, but right now I'm discriminating people. If they're living in Quebec, I'm saying no. I'm sorry, but you can't hire me. I'm from the Quebec side, so I'm unemployable now in the region.
Yeah, and one other thing, although we were just talking about the wonders of collaboration and how wonderful that is, there's another hitch that you wouldn't think of through OIDMTC. In the OIDMTC world, you need to show that one place, one company, you have done the preponderance of the work. This 80% eligible expenses occurred in Ontario by yourself. If JS and I partnered on a game 50-50, and let's pretend for the moment it's $1 million game, and I put in $500,000, you put in $500,000, and they're all Ontario residents, it's still not appropriate. That game is no longer eligible for tax credit because no one of us did a preponderance of the work.
Isn't 20% really though? The tax credit would be 20% really.
Unless that is changed for the better.
Yeah, that's
See, look, things are getting better.
So
All I know is
that's
we
the
came
20%
very
rule.
close to
So
losing.
80% is the amount of expense
Yeah.
you have incurred,
Yeah.
20% is the amount of the product.
But the point is that we will have done half of the
But
work.
as long
And
as
so
you
that's
do
fine, as long as we do 20, or the 20?
That's the 20%.
So,
80,
to
25,
to
25.
clarify, what is the statement?
The statement is, forget what I just said. The good news is, in the old days, you have to show that you did 85% of the work on a project if I'm licensing something from somebody else, or if we're partnering on something and JS has some initial designs or something and we're going to implement those. If we did 85% of the work, we can actually make a claim. If he does 30% of the work and we do 70% of the work, nobody gets to claim anything because nobody did 85% of the work. But now,
Yeah, there's a 25%.
which I am learning today, the 25 and
So
the
you can
80-25.
you can call me next week
Uh-huh.
and we can work on a project together.
You have to do at least 25% of the work on a project. But it means that 4 studios can get together. Look, it is a collaboration. We're bringing everyone together.
Yeah, they did change for that.
That's true. There you go. I take it all back.
I'd just like to say that our funders do this to us. They change, I can't blame them, and they're actually great funders, but they don't notify you when they make a little change on their website or their rules. It just goes up there. And my mind has been messed with many times where I show one of my colleagues, no, the rule is this, and then you go on the website and it's not what you're saying, because I swear sometimes I screwed up. But sometimes they change it, and it's an evolving thing.
That's a good point.
I have basically 50% of your problems and 50% of my own. Having a virtual office runs a multitude of other exclusions that basically say, don't bother. Because if you don't have X amount of dollars, like the IDMF fund, if you don't have X amount of dollars being spent in Ontario of your ask, then you're just not going to get it anyways. And so it comes to a mentality of having to know how to develop your game or your product in a manner that's going to satiate the appetite of the funder, but at the same time be able to keep the harmony and make it actually real of what you want to do inside the team dynamic and the product dynamic as well. So for me, it's a lot of the times it's okay, I'm going to need to bring on people to get to that point that I'll qualify, but depending on the funding source, we've only applied for CMF and IDMF. That depending on the funding source, that is more important or less important, because IDMF is a non-reimbursable. It's a grant. They are a lot more requiring to everything be in Ontario. So you have to really, well, at least for my situation, we really have to sort of look to how it's best to accommodate what we need and what they need, and is it going to be viable to even make the application?
By and large, most of these programs exist as job creation or job retention funds. Nobody is really looking to make money off these things. So CMF, even though you are repaying a percentage of expense, so if CMF gives you half the money, they take half the profit, sort of. It's a long story there. It's over 7 years, they do whatever. And they're not really doing that to get their money back. That's actually, if I back off one step, the reason that's all there, CMF used to be a grant. And then some wise person in the House of Commons one day stood up after Flickr sold for some zillions of dollars, which was a CMF. It was a game that had Flickr as a tech component. Then it sold for whatever, billions of dollars. And then somebody said, hey, can we get our money back on that? And they said, actually, no, it's a grant. Why is it a grant? So they put in these projections in case you actually do get it paid. Because, anyway, my point is that it's very fair. And by and large, it's a job creation and retention funds. They are there to assess commercial viability, but they know, just as we do in this theater, most games don't make money. It's a hit-driven business. You know, everybody's going to have a hit. That's great, but it's not guaranteed. And by and large, it's not like people are out there saying, "Man, we are only funding the 10 hits that are going to come out this year." They know if I fund 10 things, one of them might be great, and 7 really probably won't be, and a couple will be okay, or whatever. It's a lot like venture capital investing or whatever. I don't know what my point was on that.
No.
Just remember one day Flickr sold for a bunch of money and it was invented in Vancouver or wherever.
Yeah, you guys are on point. The question is specifically was share some more experience specific to one you guys have been successful in.
I do have another experience to share. So the minute you're going to incorporate, and the minute you're going to finish your first fiscal year, I can guarantee you that you're going to start receiving phone calls. And those phone calls will be from companies that wants to do your shred and your OID and CCA. Basically, these companies are, sometimes it's big corporation. It could be like very well-established corporation that basically their proposal is give me 30% of the grant and I'm going to fill the grant for you. I'm going to guarantee that that grant is going to be successful. First, the OMDC doesn't really like those corporations because they have armies of lawyers to try to defend their proposal even if they're sketchy. But I would also advise you to be very careful about it. There are some companies I won't name, but in town, there are some companies that did file shred under that kind of companies. And when, several years after, when the CRA started auditing those companies to understand why they filed those shred tax credit, because the wording was by people that never worked at that company, it was so vague that they were not able to kind of justify the grants. And at that point, that's where you get in trouble, because the CRA will start looking deeply into each of your projects and start looking at all your shred application for the last 7 years, and everything that they flag sketchy, they will start marking it, and you may have to reimburse a lot of money. So for a small corporation, when they could get back 7 years before and tell you that you owe them suddenly $500,000 for non-justifiable claim, then you can get in real trouble. So we've decided to file our claim ourselves. That's something that I would recommend. Like, have your people understand exactly what shred is, how it works, read the legislation, understand everything about those shred, and claim it yourself if you can, because you're probably the best person to explain what you did, right? If you decide to work with those corporations, that may be fine too. There are some companies that successfully work, but make sure that they do a proper and review what they do before submitting any shred claim.
2 notes on that. That is very valid advice, and if you actually want to know why I'm waiting 4 years or whatever for my stupid OID and PCs, because the system is so overloaded. And the reason it's so overloaded is because a lot of these companies have come in and convinced somebody a very sketchy claim on the digital media side. But again, to the OID and MTC, they, by law, the MRIs, they got to go through them one by one by one. And somebody says, oh, I put a game at a gas pump, and so Shell is filing, for a $3 million tax credit or something because they actually have a game at the gas pump where you press a button to see if something happens. And they apply for that, but they have to give it just as much, attention that they do for my stuff. So there's just stacks of these things up because these army of companies have gone in and said, oh man, don't even worry about it, we'll take care of everything. And then they just flood the system with these specious applications.
OMDC told me at some point that a further I'll put an application for OID and MTC. That's with it.
Okay, first of all, they put the fun in funeral.
Yeah.
And if they didn't use that tagline, somebody should have got fired.
It's on YouTube, so they can.
Yeah, there you go. That's for everybody to enjoy. Anyway, so that's.
I actually had a comment on shreds. Shreds specifically, from my experience working with people in the shred department at CNA, they want to help you with your application even before you've made it. So it can be a situation where you just basically call up shred and be like, hey, I want somebody to help me figure out how to make this application. So if you're considering doing it yourself, the government will actually help you actively to do it yourself. Because I think also that they don't want the vague, and they also want to help you before the start of your fiscal year that you're going to be claiming. They want to get you up to speed on what you need to be tracking during that fiscal year so that you can make a proper claim. And they're very much actively wanting to help you in that.
IRAP has similar support from the organization too, where as long as you're convinced that you're legit and you've had past experience and successes, they want to work with you, do everything possible to make you successful.
Absolutely.
For that note, no matter what you're doing, and we all like to go, government, but realistically speaking, you want to incorporate. You call them up, say, hey, I need some help. And they're more than happy to help you, because as much as we go to the government, there's a lot of those programs, don't forget, those are people on the other end of the phone who understand that you're a dude trying to make a business happen, or you're a girl trying to start your own industry, you get your spot in the industry, and you're trying to make things happen. So reaching out, getting that help.
And the place to reach out actually is you can call Sierra, absolutely true, but right here in Ottawa, there's a great resource known as Invest Ottawa that will help you find the government resources you need to find. You can go visit them at
Dr.
99
Kristen on that.
Kirsten's in the back somewhere,
Oh,
probably.
Kirsten,
There we
there you
go.
go. Everybody see Kirsten Sardell, she's waving. They're at 99 Aberdeen. You can walk in and get literature. You can.
No, they're
No,
not.
they're
Oh, sorry, the
babies.
babies.
Seven
The yards.
babies.
I forgot. Moved up to the yards. Okay,
They're
great.
80 Aberdeen.
99 Aberdeen. Kirsten, where were you?
100.
We're at 80 Aberdeen, I know you guys see why.
Well, 99 might be the heart of the crowd. I know. The address is very familiar to me, so I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is, give them a shout. They can help guide you through really even what programs apply to what you're trying to do. Because as much as we've talked about 5 or 6 that are here, and they all apply in their own ways. And by the way, it's not about double dipping or whatever, it's about separating which parts of your project apply to different things. They can help you, guide you through those. And there's a lot that we haven't even talked about, like new jobs fund and investment matching and all sorts of different stuff. So I really encourage you to talk.
Oh, and speaking of investment, I already have like a fantastic incubation space. So if you want to start your own business and don't want to invest right away in brick and mortars, speak with Kristen.
You should be doing this whole thing. Why are we doing it?
Yeah, exactly.
Realistically, they're there to help you. They're there specifically to help you succeed. That's the bottom line.
So, okay, so let's talk about some of the projects slash games that have won or not won, in some cases, projects, right? Of some of these funds we talked about, right? And what do you think were the main reasons for the success or from the aspect of the games themselves?
On the CMF side, we got funding for the Brain Cloud enablement to help other Canadian media providers create games, so that was the hook that was on there. From the IDM side, when we've won that, what really goes a long way with IDM is if you have a publishing agreement, like if you've actually convinced a third party that this is a great game and we want to actually publish it and sell it when it's ready, if you can get lucky enough to do that, that makes it a lot easier to apply for those things because there's already the veneer of whether or not it's a commercial possibilities or whatever sort of fades a bit because you actually have somebody backing you up saying, we're willing to publish this game. And there's different publishing arrangements that can obviously happen. But if you get to a place where, Sony's going to give you $1 million or whatever to make a game, IDM looks at that and says, yeah, well, I guess, sure.
Yeah, the same thing happened in the startup world where they want a lead investor. That's all you need to convince. Right. Everybody else piggybacks on that lead investor's due diligence.
Yeah.
And say, oh, you got Scott's backing, you got my backing. Here you go.
That being said, the IDMF is really good in fundings in these studios. You don't really need to have like the publisher. I'm sure it helps. But our first title that won the IDMF was Windforge, and Windforge was completely self-published. We did run a Kickstarter much after winning the IDMF. And for us, this is one of the games that made our studio on the map. So I can tell that if today we're a studio of 20 people plus and still growing, it's partially because OMDC supported us, and I think that's their plan. It helped growing the studio. It helped, even if like WinForge was a commercial, it broke even, so it wasn't a commercial failure, but it wasn't like a tremendous success, but it helped growing the studio. Then we got another IDMF with Cage Break, a title that we sadly had to cancel before releasing the game. And it was a tough conversation with the IDMF, but they understood. We told them why we didn't think that there was a market for that game. Any money we would throw into that game would probably be at loss, and at some point we told them, for us it's not willing. We knew that it would be hard in our relationship, and the next application would be harder. But then we filed again, and the next time we got our financing, because we came with a strong plan, showing that we learned our lesson from the past. And even if my studio is doing a lot of service for the gaming industry, like there's constantly this flow of new original title that one day we hope will take over the rest of the companies, but IDMF is providing us the support to put those games out there. So I think it's a very great initiative just for that, and they're easy to work with. It's really people that wants you to succeed, and they're working with you.
And it's also, should be noted, the new IDM, so the new prototype, what's the prototype?
Development fund.
The development side on the IDM. IDM used to be, it's 150 grand for full product. Got to go out and do it, you got an extra 150. But now they have the development side where it's to develop your idea, the prototype it out, to give it an idea of whether or not this really makes sense. I am going to try an interesting game mechanic, or I am going to see, you know, if I can put these things together in a reasonable way. And those are smaller, is it 50K or what's 50K?
Yeah. No, it's more than that.
No, you have 50K on the front.
Oh yeah, it's 50K.
And so it's a smaller ask, but it also is enough to get you to see whether or not you really think you have a game here or not. And so a lot of that is, I think, a direct result of companies like Jess who are good enough to say, yeah, we've come far enough down the road, but it's really just not going to come together as a game. We need to come out of what we need to do. That would have been in the case of when they did the development side, that first 50, if that existed back then. That's the kind of thing where that would have been the first thing you go into, and you try it out and say, yeah, I don't really think it's actually going to work. Great, no harm, no foul. It's there to actually prototype and try to do it.
And interestingly enough, the Cage Break, we've asked 65Ks to do that game, and then we realized that it was grossly underestimated and everything. And then, like, we just went for an experimental or a development fund, and we asked for 50K. And basically, this time we're going to know at the end of production if it works or not. Keep in mind that the global envelope for the IDMF is 10 million, and the maximum now reached, they increased it to 250K, so we can ask up to 250K in production and up to 50K in experimental stream. But if you divide like the 10 million by the number, and it's really rare the application that goes at 250K. So let's say you average that to 100K, they're still funding about 100 studio every year. So 100 studio in Ontario, there's not that much of a big industry, so your chances are still very good. They are funding a lot of projects, and a lot of Ottawa studio have been taking advantage of that.
And once again, that is the grants that's non-repayable. You get it, it's your money to try to do, and you get it in milestones, but you do get money up front for that. You're not waiting for it.
Just to go to quick points, again, I want to rephrase the question a little bit to bring back. Taking specific examples from the past of the games that are won or lost funds you applied for, what do you think were the qualifying factors or attributes of the game itself, the project itself, that led to the success or failure of that fund? Or you can also say the completely reasonable answer is, well, the game has nothing to do with this.
Yeah. No, the game has a lot to do with it.
Okay, great. Let's start.
I think we've won 3 IDMs and we've lost, I want to say 1, it might be 2. But the one I could think of, looking back, it was not a great game. We thought at the time, oh, this is fun, and it was just very focused on the Microsoft avatars back when the Xbox came out. They were first doing that. It was a balloon fight. It was a kids' thing. And at the time, we got pretty pumped about it. Saying, yeah, it's a fun game. It's going to be neat and whatever. And then, but looking back, I think we had a reasonable team. We actually had a commitment to publish whatever. It's just the game wasn't that great. But you got enough good, frank feedback to say this. Not like they said this game is terrible, but they might as well have said this game is terrible. Because looking back today, I would not have wanted to build that game. I don't know what we were drinking the day we thought that would be a good game. But it was just, yeah, it was at 99 Aberdeen. But it was just, the game wasn't that fun. So, and we sort of knew at the time, when we put stuff in, it's like, oh, we'll find the fun and it'll be there. But the mechanic was mostly set, and it was all, you know, I think it failed because it was very specific to one platform, one technology. It was a one focused thing. If that didn't work, nothing was going to work. And it just didn't have enough reps of what made the game fun. So they were right to not give us that.
Yeah, it's a judging process, and I think you can trust it. So we successfully applied, but we never failed at EMF. Well, we failed once that he reapplied and got it the second time. But we never failed completely on a title. But the title where we had to reapply a second time, the jury was right. We were looking at the application, and we had to improve our application because there was an aspect of it where the jury was pointing the finger on the right stuff. We didn't fully thought about our monetization model because it was a free-to-play game. We needed to review that. We needed to come with a much stronger application, which we did. So I think it's, and answering your question is hard because like every game is so different, but you can trust their system to kind of identify like the weakness of your system. It doesn't mean that your game is going to be a success. It's a very tough market out there. We're releasing a game and guaranteeing a success, but they're working in making sure that you will have some sort of chance in that market. Then after, there's tons of factors. You could release your game the same day then Pokemon Go released their title, and you get completely, well, you did release a game at some point that was like the same day than something like, isn't World of Battle?
Yes! Our first Espial title, which was very network battle-centric, and we were going to be the very first game that did peer-to-peer, and we still are, I believe, the first game that does 16-player peer-to-peer networking on Espial. And I'm very specifically going to say peer-to-peer because that's all we were allowed to do at the time. But then the week before that, Battlefield 1943 came out, which allowed 48 people battle, blah, blah, blah. And it's because they have their own servers, and that's just cheating. The guys are so clever to figure this thing out. It was great. But we also released the same week as Tales of Monkey Island. Bit of a popular game. And after Battlefield was the best-selling game of the year. And we also had Tour de France came out that week. It was the first time they actually put out two things. And then the week after that, the XBLA summer sale started. Yeah, it was the worst one. But we did put the game out. Thanks for reminding me of that.
We just did our first application for CMF and OMD's IDMF last year, and we got rejected for both, and we got a bit of a different flavor than the gentleman over here. The one thing I can say is they tell you don't give us all this extra crap. I don't buy that. Give them all the extra crap, because some of the information that I got as feedback was that they didn't get enough crap. They didn't get enough information to fill their bucket that they needed to have. That being said, there's also a couple of components that I think are one of the things we were talking about earlier, and that being new to the game, new to the play yard. Not having that much time in, we got zero credibility for not being around that long, not having shipped out a bunch of titles. Sure, we shipped the title, but we haven't shipped a bunch of titles. That one was designed for a certain capacity, but not designed for being a continual revenue stream. That didn't count. These are things that, and I'm not slagging, I think the funds are fantastic, and if you're watching YouTube, yeah, I want the money. But it's one of those things where, you know, we were told that our racing game, Time Warp Racers, is not a racing game. Well, no, it's a racing game. It's been explained it's a racing game. So there was some parts of it that we just didn't get. As a team, we couldn't understand some of the feedback that we got. And so the one thing I will say is that if you're going to apply for this stuff, you gotta have a thick skin, even just to be in the industry. You're going to have people tell you that your stuff is garbage. You're going to have people that are just going to tell you you're an idiot for doing it. Don't waste your time. Go get a job at McDonald's and you know, ask somebody if you want fries with that instead because you suck at this. You're going to get, but you have people say, wow, this is really fantastic. I've never thought of somebody who did this component in something. So get a thick skin. If you don't have a thick skin, honestly, you're going to have a real difficult time getting through. So, because that's some of the feedback. Now, from the other side of the application, we got some of the same feedback, the congruency to you haven't been around enough, we don't see enough in you that is going to mitigate the risk for what we want to put the money into, without having so much of a, I don't understand, this is, well, it's not a racing game, this is though, but it's an actual racing game. So one of the funding is a little bit more specific. One of them was a little bit more, it seemed, on an individualized component with that human factor component to it. But the one thing I would say is definitely be ready to be told that you're crap if they feel like saying it to you.
It's practice for when you pitch to publishers. It's
Yeah.
good practice here.
Be real, it's real.
So for the next topic, can we share some best practices or processes, specific steps involved in budgeting a game? Budgeting the cost.
So, I'm teaching project management at Carleton University, and what I'm always telling my students is that they need to get better at breaking down tasks. And I think that's where the key is. When you have a project, there's multiple reasons why you need to be able to break down a task into like very small components. First, it forces you to understand what the project is made of, and like ask you the real question, like how I'm going to do this game, and like to the very small component. And so really budgeting is about opening an Excel sheet and starting putting everything that you can bring down, and like regroup your team, sit together, start like listing all the tasks as much as you can, do it 4 or 5 times. You're going to miss half of the point anyway, but do it again, and start putting estimates. These are estimates, you will screw, but then buffer at the end, add some stuff, be conservative, and so it's not always something we're doing. Every time we start a game, we said, okay, what kind of game? It's a platformer, so we need to have like a hero that's going to have like an input, a camera system. You start like listening all these like jumping, platform mechanics, like now levels, end of levels, like UI, all the components. You list, and basically spend like a day filling out whiteboards with information, and then start breaking down and then putting time estimates on each of these, both on the art side. The CMF has a very interesting sheet that, and the CMF and the IDMF, they have the same sheet, that is directly coming from the film and television. They basically took the film and television and put it on there. So you're going to have like points, you say like, how the hell I need this, the camera crew for my game, or something like that. But you'll find a way to put like fit everyone into their weird categories. And eventually, but these are also reminders that you need to put an overhead for the management. You need to put an overhead for the testing, or for the software, or just for the Unity license you have to buy for your system. So their budget sheet can help. Ask someone else to review also your project. We mentioned it at the beginning for the application, but also for the budget. Have someone else that knows the industry to review the process, and that's going to help you budget it properly.
I would say, don't wait for the last minute. One of the things that I straight up screwed this one up is that I had everything ready to go on one of the submissions, and then I thought it was, in my head, I got it all, I just got to plug and play, and then I couldn't get the thing to work. And so I'm sitting there at like the 11th hour, calling JS, going, JS, fuck, okay, here, I'll send you this file. Yeah, no, I can't get it to go. And it's true. Don't leave it till the last minute. Get it all done 3-4 weeks ahead of time, so that way you can be all done it, get it to your friends, get it to your colleagues, get them to be able to run through it, and then you get it back, give you time to fix it, and then, do rechecks. That's the one thing I guarantee is the biggest thing that I could learn on budgeting. That, and everything that you think, that I don't have to include that, include it. Don't miss out on the minutia, because the minutia, it's in the details, is where you're going to lose your numbers.
Yeah, I mean, as far as getting to know when they're judging your product, it's not a cheapest product wins. It's most thought out. You've thought of contingencies. You've actually put realistic time frames to do things. That goes a long way to showing that your team really appreciates what you're really about to do, as opposed to, well, I'm only going to apply for 20K, even though I really think it's going to be 40. And even if you think it's going to be 20K, it's really not going to be 20K. You must know that by finding the fund is a difficult line item to put into a, it's always going to take you longer than you think it's going to. So be sure that you're putting in realistic numbers that you know you're going to be able to hit, because that's what they will appreciate seeing to award you in the first place. But remember, you're also at the end of this, you're putting together a spreadsheet that shows budget versus actual. And that may not kill you this time, but then the next time you go to apply, they're going to look at somebody who's overspent by 200% and say, well, maybe they don't know how to write games after all.
Be honest with yourself as well as them.
But
And it gets easier the second time around. And for me, I'm not complicated. You guys sound like they're pretty involved, but I have a chance to keep it simple, and whenever that arises, I definitely seize upon it. So my budgets are just some salaries, a little bit of equipment, some travel, and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. My experience on the fringe, the salary, nominal pay, and you still have to pay out more as the company and institution. Keeping it simple is good.
And what are some things that are commonly overlooked in your budgeting?
The number of hours it's going to take.
Yeah.
Just being realistic about the amount it's going to take. We always aim for best case scenario, but that's not the reality of it. Sometimes it's going to take you that, well, we did all that and it just doesn't work right. And that's not what we're looking for. It doesn't have the right feel, the right component that you want it to have. It's not going to be the engaging thing that's going to grab your audience. So that's the one I would say.
It depends a little bit on the platform, but for sure the debugging phase at the end is often overlooked. We say, oh, we just need 10% for debugging. Actually, it's always taking a lot of time. Like just the certification process, if you're going on a console, it's a very long and tedious process. And like when you have like a peer-to-peer game, you eventually need to kind of mobilize all your team on different consoles to start connecting. And like this is super. The other thing that is often overlooked is that we don't consider when we're budgeting that our team's going to meet. They're going to do daily scrum meeting. They're going to do like meeting once every 2 weeks to plan their next iteration. And I don't know, like people says, they kind of calculate on a day rate and they say, okay, it's going to take like us that much day, but they don't consider that people will be socializing. They will like these takes time, and not everyone is 100% like productive all the time. And you also need to take into consideration that maybe mid-project someone will leave, you'll have to replace it. So there's a lot of like incident happens, and we're in a creative industry too. You were mentioning that all project once you have to find a fund, but it's about being creative. We will try to get the best product, and at the beginning of a project, there's kind of a tendency of us to try to push more and push more without realizing that this push back the end line at the other end. We're just saying, oh, so it really requires a very tight management saying, hey, we need to hit these deadlines. So as a suggestion, if you want to stay within budget and avoid missing elements, stick to your initial deadlines. When you're saying, like, I'm going to have a vertical slice on April 6th, make sure that you're going to have your vertical slice at April 6th. It's not because the game's going to ship in December that you have all the time in the world. Make sure that every deadline is a critical one to reach, and put the pressure from day one. Don't wait until the last month to realize that you're screwed.
Standard iterative development stuff where hitting your dates is important, moving features out is less important, but you always need to hit those iterations with something that's testable, reviewable. You can do a milestone check to make sure that you think you know where you are or not. Because to JS's point, you're going to want to have something there that you can actually review and look at and see if you're done or not. If you actually hit April 6th and you don't have a playable, or you don't have a prototype, or you don't have animations done, or whatever those things are that you need to review, but you just think, well, we've done progress because we've put in this many hours, so we've hit April 6th, we must be okay, and then you hit the next one and the next one. Pretty soon you run out of time. The famous quote from Lord Michael of Saturday Night Live that says, the show goes on, not because it's ready, it goes on because it's 11:30 on Saturday. You just take what you have, and that's what goes on, and you do the best that you can with it. Then you move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that's really good advice to try to get stuff done. Don't kill yourself saying, well, I'm now going to push my April 6th out to May 6th. No, put something out on April 6th and move your features out. Again, you're not going to get them all until May 6th, but get something ready so that you can have other people review it and get other feedback.
That reminds me, for us, it's probably still applicable, but it's the scoping up front. Because we have companies that come in and they're ambitious, And then we get swept up in the enthusiasm and then promise too much. So it's extremely valuable to just be very realistic up front with what you can do with the time.
And this probably gets a bigger topic, but we're going to keep digging deeper into this. I want to unfortunately cut this short. That specifics are projections, budgeting, just dealing with scope creep and whatnot. So it's just to move on this. When do you think people should raise funds? When you go into making a game and you know you have some funds out of pocket, how much can you rely on funds that you're applying for before starting to develop? How early should we raise funds?
The good news is everything's relatively well known in far, well, sorry, I shouldn't say everything. Things like NSERC and IRAP can happen at a moment's notice. I could theoretically go talk to my IRAP guy tomorrow and say, I got a great idea, he can see if he has some money in the couch cushions, okay, great, we can try to start a project. But whereas IDM goes, it's like, hey, it's May and October or whatever the dates are, and CMF is like April and August or whatever. Like those dates are relatively well known that you can't, you need to match up with one of those to actually even apply for your funds. And the OIDMTC, that happens at the end of your tax year when you actually go back and try to apply for something. Shred, it's the end of your tax year, you refile and you put your shred in for the previous year. So timing is very well known for those things, but the seed money to get you going is more like, I guess, you're either waiting to start until you hear from, so if you apply for in May to IDM, I think you find out in like August. Takes a few months. So you might apply in May for a game you want to build, but you can't start in earnest until August. Technically, you can start after you put your application in, then you can start work, and then if you get it, you can retroactively put those few months in. But if you work for 6 months up to an application deadline, apply on May 1st for IDM or whatever day it is. IDM doesn't let you go back to April, March, February, January. You start, May 1st is when you can start recouping funds from IDM. So it's only from then forward. And then you may actually not even win it, so risk is up to you to build into it, but you can't actually get that far. So.
I think I'm going to interpret your question another way. When do you need to apply for those funds? I would say don't apply just because those funds exist. Apply if you realize that there's really a need for it. So if you have a great game idea and you don't need those funds to come to your great game idea, go for it. Like if you're like 3 new grads from a program and you think you have like the next big hits, like and you want to move forward, like you don't have to rely on those funds. Like we are lucky in Canada to have those funds, but in the States games are made and there's plenty of games that are made without any single dime being put from the government in those games. So do these games when you really need that. You really believe that that money will make a difference for your game and will allow you to get a better project. But by all means, if you don't have to rely on those funds, that's great. I would still suggest to incorporate and bet on the OIDMTC. Why not? The money's there, and if you do a game, you should qualify. So don't be smart and think about those things ahead of time, because they may allow you to put more feature in the long run. They may allow you to be more profitable. But at the same time, like by all means, if you can do a game and you don't have to apply to IDMF because you think you can do it yourself, go for it. That's a good thing. Did you have any IDMF for the Keep Talking? So Keep Talking was a great success, and they didn't get CMF or IDMF. They just came with a great idea. They did their game, and it's an international success. So if there's a good example that you don't need those funds.
See, on the flip side, my thoughts are the opposite. Is like best time to ask for money is when you really don't need it. So you're safe regardless, right? You still qualify, you still do the right things, and lack of that money coming in is not going to kill you, right? But at least it's going to give you experience next time when you really need it.
So I'm going to put that question to these guys. So do you think the game would have been different if you would have had $250,000 more? Like, let's say IDMF would have given you $250,000. Would you have come with a different and better game?
I have a hard time answering that question because I don't know what responsibilities come with getting that money. We had the flexibility of not having any deadlines. We had the flexibility of not having any requirements for making a game that would actually make money, or that would be commercially successful. We had zero requirements on any of our
So,
artistic.
very good points. So these programs comes with ties. Like, even though they are flexible, let's say you're going to miss your deadline, you can call OFDC, you can call Kim Gibson and say, hey Kim, I'm in trouble, I need another 6 months to finish my game. They won't like it, but they will probably grant you the things if you're able to justify why you want to do it. But still, it's an annoying process because you get the pressure that comes with your game. Doing your game alone doesn't come with that pressure.
Yeah, I think they are super flexible on time. And again, I'm pretty sure the boundary is something like you can be about a year late, but you can't go into like the next year's funds because you've got to pay them out from before. Not speaking from experience or anything, but we may have been incredibly late on one of our deliverables. But the other thing is that the thing you need to deliver also doesn't have to have the exact feature set you're talking about, but it does have to demonstrably be the same thing you've applied for. I think in many cases they're happy to learn that you're changing something up to make it a better game. But in the case where there's no commercial tie to it, it's probably more difficult to show that you're actually doing it for a good reason. If you look, like if you say, look, we've changed the game because the App Store has changed and I can only make money by doing this different thing now, they can totally understand that. But if it's no, we decided, it's going to be more of a mood game than an action game or something, just because that's what we feel like making, then you do get into, well, now you're not making the same thing that we gave you money for. So there are, I would suggest very legitimate reasons they want you to stick to the script, but they have been super flexible with us every time we've had a change.
To stick with, actually a little tighter to your question, sorry, I wasn't me. But sweat equity doesn't really count when it comes to the applications. So if you need to get funding, they always say that the first money that you're going to get is sweat equity, and it's going to be blood money. So talking friends, family, from your own bank account.
Friends, family, and food.
Foes. Well, those are the ones you don't have to pay back. But that's the money that you're really reaching, because we all know that you don't go into business with family, because if it goes awry, then you're going to be screwed up with family. But to draw those monies, and you got to really be making sure that that's going to have a dividend to it. So in the idea of when do you best go for raising funds, kind of halfway between the two is where my thought would be, is that you can only run blood monies to so far. The sweat equity doesn't count when it goes to an application. So having the ability to foresee what you're going to need, that step ahead, not looking inside your little bubble, but look out past that and see, I'm going to need to get to here. I can reach to here, so I need to, and sort of work backwards from that point to say, okay, so I got to do this now to get to that then, so I can get to there when I need to be there. And a lot of that, honestly, comes from talking, and it's right off the top of the conversation that we had, is talking to your colleagues, talking to your peers in the industry, in the community, because they may have seen this stuff before. They may know better than you because of the experience that they have.
I am not loading you any money.
$50.
So
Just come to the bar.
To be a very valid point, and the thing that JS brought up earlier, when you look at all the different programs that are there, it's actually interesting also to say, if you're legitimately trying to work backwards, the time to apply, you really will put out a calendar of when the application processes go and when your money is actually going to come in. Because a lot of the programs like CMF or IDM or whatever are looking for, well, where is your matching funds coming from? And it's actually valid to say, oh, my OID MPCs will back up some of the coverage on like CMF or whatever. Hey, I may need to do a matching fund, but a third of that's going to come from tax credits, which I won't have for a while or whatever. But it basically balances out as that's how the package all gets put up. But in CMF, you can also say, yes, I have IDM fund, or I have IRAP, or I have other sources of government funding, which are the things that are providing that in. Now, it makes it all a bit of a house of cards, and if one of them doesn't happen, you have to make up for that somehow. But it also gets the legitimacy of the application, where if you're actually going into CMF saying, well, I've already received IDM funds, I've been approved for that, and I have an IRAP grant or whatever that's also been approved, and I'm in process for OID MPCs, which I've claimed once before, they can look at that and say, well, that actually makes up a reasonable financial base for the stuff that we're doing. So it doesn't mean you win or not, but it certainly helps make your case of, I don't need to go to my grandma and ask her for all the money, I only need $250,000 from grandma. I mean, I can get the rest from her.
Any thoughts?
Just was not forgotten, although it's obvious, it's to play to your own strengths as well. It's not, I think the human side is probably more important than the actual business side. I'm just deeply impressed with everybody, artistic people, creative people, and business savvy, big time, and tough. Like, you have to be bold at times to make things happen, but not all of us are. I tried it, and it's not I'm not good at it, the entrepreneur thing. So yeah, it's playing to your strengths too.
We'll open for questions now.
Like our open floor to questions right when there's a big yawn going on. Something like that was a really important question.
Brian?
What was the CMF royalty structure? Can you discuss that?
It basically is if it's $1 million project, or sorry, if CMF's putting $1 million into a $4 million project, so you're putting in $3 million and they're putting in $1 million, they'll take 33% of the royalties for the next 7 years, and royalties being net royalties after things that you. It's net, so it's good because you can put in it's profit. So you basically can put in your expenses for staff and running servers and advertising and sales and all that other stuff. And it's basically pure profit at the end of the day. They'll take 33% of that on a quarterly basis until you either pay it back, in which case they're not quite all the way out. They actually then dip down to a lower level of royalty structure, or until 7 years, whichever sort of works first. But if you actually get through 7 years without doing something, then the thing will just be retired. But they are super easy to work with on putting in what counts as a piece of net revenue.
Yeah, I think what you
Yeah,
mentioned.
Oh, sorry.
It's a quick one. It sounds like team size might be important. Like, would you be more likely to get funding if you
Not
had?
really. Of course, I'm not sure they will fund like a team of 2 or 3, but even each of these funds are expecting you to have the proper resource for a project. So if you are putting a game that has a narrative, they will look at, do you have a writer, do you have like a designer, do you have like a production staff? So to some extent, yes, they will look at a core team that is solid enough, but I would say it doesn't matter once you pass like a 6 or 7 individual, if you go from 6 to 7 or if you go to 55, it doesn't really matter.
They do have reasonable guidelines and limits on what you're paying yourself. Like you can't pay myself $1 million an hour. There is a cap on different roles of the game roles they go through, so that prevents somebody from saying it's $1 million game and there's only 3 of us making it. Well, like $800,000 in a license or something. Yeah, okay, fine. But
in my situation, it's having 3 people in Ontario and 3 people in other countries. It changes the dynamic of what's a viable option for those funding sources. So they're looking at, okay, how much of that money is going into Ontario, and metering those to scale. It has to, it's like a real balancing act to make sure that you're going to hit the marks that they're looking for. So it can't play good back.
It's a little bit of side comments, but one thing that we haven't mentioned, we were mentioning at the beginning that, for instance, if you apply to a DMF, you need to back the project with the same amount. So let's say you're asking 50K, you need to have 50K. One thing that IDMF is not, OMDC is not super fan of this, but they will allow it. You can also have different salaries. You can also say, I'm not going to pay myself for that project, and that's going to count into the 50K. They won't allow you to put the entire 50K as deferred salary, but I'm telling you, because your first grant was this way, we had like deferred salary for a couple of our directors, it was allowing us to reduce the cash investment we had to put in the project.
it might specifically be with production and exec production or something. They have specific roles or the other ones that allow you to.
CMF is only shareholders can defer.
Oh, so the shareholders of a company, but if you are starting a company for Indeed, you name all yourself shareholders and you can start like deferring your salaries. And to be honest, that may make a difference because if you don't have the money, but you want to do the game, you can basically do it through deferred salary.
And you were,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, I guess for Diametric mainly. So for example, in my case, I have an entirely remote team spread across like 8 countries. Like, are you really eligible for anything, or like what
Yeah, you go to the
resources
street corner,
exist?
there's a guy with a chip wagon. Now, yeah, you totally are, just you have to meet the criteria that they're looking for. You know, with IDMF, 90% of the funds have to stay within Ontario. So you have to make sure that everything that you're doing and everything you're applying for, this is where you can't just, you know, throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks. You gotta do your due diligence in finding out what their requirements are, making sure that you can meet those requirements, so that way, before you even apply, what you're applying is a viable capacity to what they're looking for. Okay? Aside from that, I understand not having brick and mortar saves revenue, and with the internet this day, with technology, you can actually be able to do a lot of work over the internet, because that's what, you know, everybody has it in their house, and everybody has it in their phone right now. Half the people probably tuned out in the middle of the stock and started looking at their Facebook. But like you can do so much there, but you won't have success if in the applications if too much of it is spread out into those other zones. It still has to be centralized, because it is, CMF is the Canadian Media Fund, and OMDC is the Ontario Media Development Corporation. So you gotta have a ground truth.
The Unreal Engine, they have a $50,000 dev grant, no strings attached. You really have to impress them though. That's just not an option.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of private. I'm trying to think of some other ones that are out there, but there is a very good point that it's not just government stuff. Technically, CMF is administered by Heritage, but it's actually funded by cable companies, so it's not technically a government thing.
Bell Media Fund as well.
Yep, yeah, the Rocket Fund does the Rocket Fund still exist?
That other idea, there's the Sony Pop Fund too.
Yep, there you go. It's a very good
The
example.
Sony Pop Fund. There's a couple of private initiatives. If you have a good idea and you want to follow it, and sometimes you need a connection again. Like Sony Pop Fund, it's much easier if you know people within Sony that you can speak directly to. But these are great options if you have good ideas.
And those are actually, again, what we were getting at a little bit earlier, where let's pretend you do go to the Sony or the Pub Fund route, and they fund you for $100 grand or whatever to build something out. Again, that carries a lot of weight when you actually go to make applications elsewhere, because you have a legit game company who's going to publish your game, virtually guaranteed. They like that. Again, it doesn't mean you're automatically in, but it really does help establish the legitimacy of the team and the game that you actually have.
It's interesting that we're barely mentioning now Kickstarters, but it's still an option too.
Well, you did that.
I did.
Just aside, there's also a lot of other grants and funding that's available government side that's not specifically to gaming and the digital media industry, but also is applicable to somebody doing something that could fall in that stream. For example, I know there's a lot of Aboriginal funds that are there for the Aboriginal community and the people who are making stuff. So whether it be art or music or digital media or whatever the case may be, there's a lot of different streams in that also could be a component that, you know, is worth doing the work.
New Jobs Fund and all sorts of things, and those are the things you talked to Kirsten about, Peter, that are outside the media spend.
Anyone else?
Have any of you used any sort of crowdfunding before, and what are your thoughts on it?
So we did WindForge. We did a Kickstarter for WindForge, a small one, 50K. So there's different ways of using Kickstarter. So I'm co-collaborating also with another company that just finished a Kickstarter for their project. We did it at the end of our project, so almost has like a pre-sale option. So our project was already ready to showcase. We were like 3 to 4 months before releasing. It was kind of pre-sale, allowing us to kind of polish a little bit the game at the end and send it to the market. I think that's the lazy way of using crowdsourcing. You already have your project. You already know that there's a market for that. The better option is to use it at the beginning, because it allows you to validate your market too. So Kickstarter, that's what in a sense should it be. It should be, I have a great idea. I believe people will adopt my idea. Let's validate that it's a great idea. So push it on Kickstarter, and if your idea doesn't show up, don't just, well, be willing to say, maybe my idea was not that great, and maybe there's no market for it. Maybe you're just terrible also announcing your Kickstarter, because there's some troubling fact that says like most of the Kickstarter gets funded by the personal networks, and there's a lot of those Kickstarter that are like just through your personal network. But there's a few exceptions where like the Kickstarter is really kicked off, and it's because there's a great product. So if you really believe that you have the next Angry Bird with chicken, well, put it on Kickstarter and let's validate that this game is the right one that the community wants.
Yeah. In addition to validation, it also gives you a great platform to build an audience even before you have anything. That zero audience, zero credibility, or just a video or a couple of screenshots and a great story.
Just for your $1 million game you were talking earlier where you can get 3/4 of it funded, can you estimate how much time and effort that would take? Like, is it hours, days, weeks?
It's weeks, for
Weeks.
sure. Just filing a CMF application, for us it's almost, last time like we were like 3 people working on that CMF application, and we spent a good 3-4 weeks each people working on that application. Not maybe full time, like there was a little bit in between and in between projects, but let's say a good 2 weeks each full time. So a month and a half worth of man months, so 1.5 man months. It's an involving process. You have to do the same. Thankfully, CMF and IDMF, they have like put their date really close to each other. Like last year, they were both in October and both in April. This year, they look like to be again both in April, well, in April, May, but late April, beginning May. And they are very similar in a sense. They're different, but they're similar. So the budget sheet is almost the same. It's a copy-paste from one to the other. The documents are very similar, so you can recycle. Shred, if you want to do a good job, it's a very tedious process. You really have to go through like filling page and page of documentation so it's time involving. OIDMTC, it's a quick one. The OIDMTC, you can probably do it in, I just finished mine in 2 or 3 days because it's
The grand irony is the OIDMTC is the quickest one to do and the longest one to get. But I would also argue, it also depends on how your company's set up. For us, Shred is actually very easy for us to do every year, especially because the write-ups are now 1,500 words or whatever. So those for us are actually easier for us to put out because of the way we do our reporting timesheets and stuff. It's just like, oof. Whereas OIDMTC is similarly, it's a little bit more complicated for us, but not by much. But then the actual funded ones, the jury ones, where you're actually doing a lot of work because it's not 2 weeks to fill out a spreadsheet, it's 2 weeks to work on it. You're effectively putting together a pitch. And you're talking about the monetization and how it's actually going to make money, and here's the team makeup, and here's the iteration plan for it to go out. It's a very much more arduous task to put through, whereas the other stuff is reporting after the fact, and if you've done it a long time, you figure out the quick way to kind of throw that stuff out.
We'll take one more question before we...
Sorry, if I can just throw in onto what Sky was saying. For making your pitches and stuff like that, to see CMF, whoever you're doing that pitch to, if you know somebody who's in sales and marketing, they're a great person to give you maybe some good phrasings and components to add into it to help you really hit those keywords, because as they're all, it's always a jury that's looking over these review style ones. You can get some really good information on how to really tune your pitch and presentation to really be more catchy and more grabby, other than just blah, blah, blah of tech information, and very bone dry. To still have it, come off the page as something exciting and engaging, just in the words of it. So.
And we have been told, even though I don't buy it, it's the first thing you should be doing inside your, especially things like your judge panel IDM type stuff, is not to tell people how unique your game is, but how similar it is to successful games, which you're sort of taught early on. You don't say Angry Birds for Chickens or whatever. It's Clash of Clans, but with chickens, is a way for the reviewer, the judge, to know at least immediately, okay, I know what that game is, I know how that's somehow unique, and then the rest of this is backing up why it's going to be just as successful or whatever. But the worst thing you can do is actually say, imagine a game you've never imagined before, because you're starting from ground zero. Now they have to start building up blocks of, well, how could this possibly be successful? I mean, sure, I haven't heard of that game before, but that means nobody's bought that game.
And be precise in your description. Keep in mind, we learned it the hard way, but the judge doesn't read the appendix. So if you're putting a description, like if your game description is 2-page and you decide that you need more than 2 page, and you start putting like everything into an appendix, that will be ready to have someone that never read your appendix and will tell you that you didn't tell enough about the game in your description.
One last question.
Yeah, I guess it's not so much a question as just an idea I had in that, I guess in filling out that kind of level of work, like paperwork for like CMF or whatever, you probably end up with something that'd be good to like show to publishers and private investors too, right? And that could be kind of a...
Yeah, it's a pitch document. You're actually coming up with your full, how you're actually going to staff the game, how you're doing it, giving it the budget. It's the same process, right? So it's not lost work for sure.
I was going to say something similar in my case, especially it's much easier the second time. I got templates, I got my budget template, I've got my formatting of my documents for upload. Yeah, it's an investment first time.
All right, thank you all so much. Thank you to the panelists. Really appreciate your time as well. We can continue the discussion at Monkey Joe's. Please join us over there. Panelists, most of the panelists will be there, at least all of them. I'm sure Scott is going to be there.
That is an outrage, sir.
Just follow the question. All right, thank you all. We'll see you there soon.